Hello friends! I have a few more garden books to read to you today. The first one is called Splat the Cat and the Oopsie Daisy. This book was written by J.E. Bright and the pictures were made by Lauren Brantz. The whole book is based on the best-selling series of Splat the Cat books by Rob Scotton. It was almost springtime. The weather was getting warmer, but the sky was still gray and rainy. Splat thought being stuck inside was a waste of a Saturday afternoon. Splat perked up when a sopping wet Seymour scurried into his room. Seymour was carrying a weird-looking seed. "Where did you get that?" asked Splat. Seymour held up the seed and stared at them. Then he shrugged. "I wonder what kind of seed it is," said Splat. "It could be anything." "Well, there's only one way to solve this mystery. Seymour, let's see if we can make it grow." "I think we need to plant it first," Splat said, "but I've never planted anything before. Do you know how to plant a seed?" Seymour shrugged. "Okay, then let's go to the library and find out," Splat said. Splat and Seymour walked straight to the library to look for a book about gardening. The only problem was that there was so much information. Splat wanted to grow one seed, not a whole field of corn. After staring at the shelves for a long time, Splat finally asked the librarian. She was happy to help him find the perfect book. The book's called A Cat's Guide to Plants and Potting by Jack Tabby. The book said the first step was getting a pot and filling it with soil. Not all the soil went in the pot. Splat! Next, Splat planted the seed in the dirt. He set the flower pot on a sunny windowsill. Then he watered the soil. Not all of the water went into the pot. Splat checked the flower pot every day. He hoped and hoped for any sign of a sprout. He wondered what kind of plant it would be. Maybe the seed would grow into a wild garden of roses. Or maybe the seed would grow into a tree as tall as the sky. Splat couldn't wait to see what grew. He sang to the seed, he read to it, and told it stories. For 2 whole weeks, Splat waited and waited for the seed to do something. Splat was ready to give up. Maybe the seed would never sprout. Feeling terribly disappointed, he watered the soil one last time, just in case. The dirt in the pot shifted a little when Splat added water. A tiny green sprout sprang up. Splat cheered loudly, but quickly shut his mouth. He didn't want to scare the little plant back into the soil. During the next week, the sprout grew a few straggly leaves. Splat was thrilled when a few days later a little bud appeared atop the stem. The next day, the bud opened and a bloom blossomed. It wasn't a wild jungle plant or a many-colored rose or a tall, tall tree. It was a flower, a little daisy, and Splat knew just who to give it to. "I love it," said Mom. "It's the most special flower ever." Splat smiled as he hugged his mother. "I grew it myself," Splat said, "with a little help from Seymour." Oh, that was a good book, friends. I liked it. Let's see what the other one is. Oh, this one is called Flowers Are Calling, and it was written by Rita Gray with pictures by Kennard Pack. Flowers are calling a little black bear. No, not a bear. He doesn't care. They're calling a butterfly to dip from the sky. Flowers are calling a wet green frog. No, not a frog. She likes her soggy bog. They're calling a bumblebee to look near their log. Flowers are calling a porcupine. No, not a porcupine. She wouldn't take the time. They're calling a hummingbird to sip at the vine. The first flower we saw was Queen Anne's lace. Butterflies like a landing pad when they drink nectar. That's why they like Queen Anne's lace. This, my friends, is monk's hood. Bumblebees are hefty enough to push deep inside the monk hood's flower where the nectar is stored. And this is trumpet honeysuckle. Hummingbirds use their long tongues to reach nectar hidden in a deep tubular flower and hover as they drink. Flowers are calling a loud blue jay. No, not a jay. He wouldn't stay. They're calling a honeybee to fly their way. Flowers are calling a little moose. No, not a moose. What would be the use? They're calling a beetle to eat their pollen loose. Come on, book. Goodness, there we go. Flowers are calling a rabbit to stop. No, not a rabbit. That's not their habit to call a rabbit. He might grab it. They're calling a bee fly to visit their spot. The first one we saw was the apple blossom. Apple tree blossom. Honeybees help make many of the fruits, nuts, and vegetables we eat by pollinating fruit tree blossoms such as the apple tree. There are also thousands of varieties of wild bees that help to make many of the foods we eat. And this, my friends, is the magnolia. And it says beetles have been visiting flowers for more than 100 million years. And down here is a violet. Bee flies look like bumblebees but have 2 wings instead of 4. Like hummingbirds, they are able to hover their furry bodies in the air as they drink nectar. Flowers are calling a small brown snake. No, not a snake, for goodness sake. They are calling a pollen wasp with nectar to take. Flowers are calling a fat raccoon. Oh, not a raccoon. He doesn't care for white bloom or sweet perfume. They're calling a moth in the light of the moon. Flowers are calling a desert deer. No, not a deer. He can't even get near. They're calling a nectar bat to flap over here. Now we've seen this flower, which is the blowout beard tongue. Pollen wasps, like bees, make loaves of nectar and pollen to feed their young. And here is the carden cactus. Lesser long-nosed bats have long tongues that can reach the nectar deep inside their bell-shaped flowers. These cactus flowers unfurl for just one short night. And this is a moonflower. Sphinx moths are expert flyers with very long tongues. The blooms of the moonflower open for just one night and depend on the nighttime visits of moths for pollination. Flowers are calling a busy wren. No, not a wren. He's already seen them. They're calling some children to look again. Look at a flower, and what do you see? Color. Flowers that have daytime visitors tend to have bright colors so they can be easily found among all the green foliage. Flowers with nighttime visitors tend to be pale with a very sweet smell, making them even easier to locate in the dark. Many insects can't see the color red and are instead drawn to yellows and blues. You see pattern when you look at a flower. Many flowers use designs to help the pollinator find nectar right away. These designs are called nectar guides. How is the middle of your flower different from its outer part? Would these differences make a pollinator find nectar? See that? See they're pointing right in here to where the nectar is. And flower shape. The shape of a flower can tell you who might come to visit. Hummingbirds can reach deep inside long, thin flowers, but honeybees have rather short tongues. They need their nectar served in a shallow golden bowl, like those on the apple blossoms. Bumblebees are rather heavy and need strong flowers that can hold their heft. So the bumblebee likes a nice strong flower. Okay, my friends, that's all we have time for today. Goodbye.